For almost a year now, I've been recommending the Technics AZ60s. They're my favourite true wireless earbuds. They've got a good build quality, comfort, sound, and also recording capabilities, and better still support the LDAC codec. So cue my excitement for the all-new AZ60M2 and also the AZ80s. Indeed, these are two true new wireless earbuds from the manufacturer. Now, the original AZ60s at the time of filming can be found now for £150 in the UK and $120 in the US. The new AZ60M2, on the other hand, can be found for £200 in the UK and $250 in the US, and the all-new AZ80s can be found for £260 in the UK and $350 in the US. So in this review, you're going to be comparing and contrasting between the three models and to see if they're actually worth their price tags. So to kick off this video, I would like to talk about connectivity. And first off, when it comes to Bluetooth codecs, it's great to see that all three support the SBC, AAC and LDAC codecs. And indeed, in this respect, the latter is certainly appreciated for those who can actually enable it. For example, if you're running on an Android device, you'll be able to enable the LDAC codecs and therefore benefit from a lower transmission loss. In other words, better and superior audio fidelity. Now, past that, when it comes to connectivity, here you have also got Bluetooth multipoint, which is supported on all three devices. However, the AZ60s, the originals, had support for two devices. However, now the AZ60M2 and the AZ80s have the first that I've ever come across, and that is support for three different devices simultaneously. Now, there is a caveat to this, however, is that if you are going to be pairing up to three different devices simultaneously, it is going to scale you back to the AAC or SBC codecs, which might not be much of an issue for those people who have an iPhone, but will come to as a disappointment for those people, for example, on Android. If, however, you're going to be scaling back to two different devices, or of course disabling multipoint and therefore going for a singular device, you will be able to simultaneously use LDAC on a singular or two different devices at the same time. Now, aside from this, it is also fantastic to see that the earbuds can be used independently from each other. In other words, you can use the left earbud independently from the right earbud, or of course use them in a stereo format. The switch does take a little bit of extra time in comparison to some of its competitors, but nonetheless shouldn't be much of an issue for a lot of individuals. Now, the thing to bear in mind here is that the transmission quality is good, at least when you're going to be relatively close to your smartphone, and of course if you're going to be using the LDAC codec when you're prioritizing audio quality. If, however, you're going to be in a busy scenario, you might actually find that there's a little bit of dropouts and therefore kind of throws you off when it comes to listening to your music. In this respect, you'll just simply have to dial down the LDAC to balanced audio quality, and therefore means that it doesn't have any sort of issues whatsoever. Now, in said mode, I also had no problems when it came to walking around my apartment, therefore going roughly 10 to 15 meters away from my smartphone while it was in a different room. Now, with all that out of the way, how do the earbuds actually sound? Well, here the AZ60s are absolutely identical to the AZ60M2s. Indeed, they have the exact same sort of driver configuration, which is an 8mm biocellularized diaphragm. Now, that is indeed different from the AZ80s, the new flagship models, because they opt for a larger 10mm free-edge aluminium diaphragm instead. Now, of course, this has an effect in terms of how the overall sound is portrayed. So I'm going to try and break it down in terms of the sound frequency range so you can get an idea as to the two. First off, let's talk about the sub-bass response. Now, here are the AZ60s, which I'm just going to bunch up in one go. In other words, AZ60s equals AZ60M2s, felt to have a little bit of a better low-end extension. It just felt to rumble a bit more, and in comparison to, let's say, the other earbuds out there in the market, such as the Sennheisers or the Neuras or of course others, I just felt that the Technics over here did a phenomenal job. However, the AZ80s just sounded a little bit more lighter. In other words, the sub-bass extension was there, specifically if you added a bit of EQ through the app, but I didn't feel that it was as connected. It could potentially be due to the overall design of the earbuds being a little bit different, and therefore meaning they don't get as deeper into my ear canal, and therefore not giving me the same sort of sub-bass feeling. But nonetheless, over here, comparing and contrasting before the AZ80s and the AZ60s, I felt myself leaning towards the AZ60s. Now, as for the mid-bass, however, they're pretty much identical. The earbuds have got a fantastic quality and also quantity. Yet again, you can EQ it to your heart's content through the app, and therefore I felt that most people listening to, let's say, R&B, D&B or EDM music will be left with a massive smile on their face. This is where the Technics really stand out in comparison to its competitors. Again, for example, the likes of Sennheiser, which comes to mind, and in this respect, these earbuds do a phenomenal job. Now, as for the mids, on the other hand, in comparison to the likes of, let's say, the Neuros or the Sennheisers, or of course some of the other flagship earbuds out there on the market, the Technics can't quite compete. And that's because they've got a slightly pushed back mid-range and therefore makes it a little bit more V-shaped. Now, it's a bit more pronounced on the AZ60s in comparison to the AZ80s, where in this respect the AZ80s feel a little bit more forward sounding. And therefore, if you're going to be listening to a lot of vocal tracks, you might actually appreciate the upgraded AZ80's driver configuration because it gives you a little bit more engagement with both male and female vocals. Now, as for the highs, all the Technics earbuds extend very well at the top end, giving you that sort of toe-tapping feeling and great sort of clarity. Of course, here, if you were to EQ it to the nth degree, it might become a little bit fatiguing and also sibilant or harsh. But in my case, with my own EQ profile, which of course I will share very soon, I didn't find any sort of problems whatsoever and therefore left me really engaged. Now, what really stood out for me with the AZ80s, the new flagship models, was the overall soundstage reproduction. See, here it very much differed from the AZ60s, and this is where I would be comparing and contrasting between the two. Here, the AZ80s seem to have a little bit of an extra widened profile. It's no surprise given they've got a slightly different diaphragm design and also driver, but in this respect, I felt that the decay and the way that the imaging was done was actually even better than the AZ60s. Now, don't get me wrong, the AZ60s are absolutely phenomenal in their own right when it comes to soundstage. They're up there with the very best and arguably class leading. So it's absolutely great to see that the AZ80s approve on this, and therefore means that if you've got loads of different instruments coming at once, for example, if you're listening to some jazz music or classical, I think you're going to really appreciate the added sort of width and depth that you get on the AZ80s over the AZ60s. So what about when it comes to recording quality? Well, everything you can hear right now is coming directly from the AZ80s with the Just My Voice function disabled. And of course, I'll be enabling it and explaining why you might want to have it permanently enabled. Now, in terms of the recording quality differences between the AZ80s and the new AZ60M2s, well, they're pretty much near on identical. The differences between the original AZ60s really comes into fruition when you have the Just My Voice function enabled, and here when you compare the two, the overall gain levels of the AZ60s seems to be a little bit more over accentuated. I'll be giving you a demo of that, so don't you worry, so you can compare and contrast and make your own judgment call. Now, for me to demonstrate the Just My Voice function, and as to why you might want to have it permanently enabled, I'm going to be antisocial and face my bookshelf speakers and play back a track from PreAJ, which is titled Like Me. Now, this is trying to demonstrate how it would focus with your voice in comparison to exterior environments and including when I go quiet. Now there, I'm giving you a little demo as to what would happen if you were on a call, for example, you were to go quiet and you were in a cafeteria. Now what I'm going to do is enable the Just My Voice function on the AZ80s so that you can actually compare and contrast the differences. So yes, indeed, everything you can hear right now is coming directly from the AZ80s with the Just My Voice function enabled. Hopefully here you can hear the differences between the feature being enabled and disabled. I'm going to be facing my bookshelf speakers yet again, playing back PreAJ's track, and hopefully here you can hear that my voice is coming a little bit more clearer in comparison to her vocals, so therefore ambient sounds are being suppressed a little bit, specifically if I go quiet. Now there, you were hopefully able to pick out that when I went quiet, you weren't able to hear PreAJ's vocals, whereas with the Just My Voice function disabled, you were able to pick out her vocals. Now, this is of course in a controlled environment. If you're in a cafeteria or something like that, it effectively means that the Just My Voice function is honing onto your voice only and not picking up all the sounds that goes around you, which is exactly what you want when you're on a phone call. Now, for me to demonstrate the differences over the previous generation model, I'm going to keep the Just My Voice function enabled and therefore go to the original AZ60s. So now everything you can hear is coming from the original AZ60s, and what I'll say subjectively is with the Just My Voice function enabled, it sounds similar to the AZ80s and the newer AZ60M2, however the overall gain level of the older model seems to be higher, which might be preferable to certain individuals. Indeed, over here I haven't adjusted the gain level in my video editor, and in this respect, yes, the original ones do seem to be a little bit louder. Now I'll let you guys be the judge as to which one you prefer, so do let me know down in the comment section below. So moving on, we get onto active noise cancellation, and here the Technics AZ60, AZ60M2 and AZ80s have got pretty much the same sort of technology. However, due to the slightly larger housing of the AZ80s, the passive noise isolation is a little bit better, and therefore was a smidge better when I was doing my control test. Nonetheless, the Technics earbuds really could not compete with any of the other flagship ANC earbuds out there on the market. From the likes of Sony, One More, or for example Libratone, where the latter was on hand, this earbud completely trumped the Technics earbuds in every single test that I threw at it. What I'm trying to say over here is that the Technics earbuds have got ANC and they do an okay job, but if ANC is your top priority, then you might want to look elsewhere. So I did touch upon the app quite a few times, so let's actually talk about it. Now here you can see I've got the Technics AZ80s connected, but if I had the Technics AZ60M2s connected, it would be the exact same sort of interface and options. So you don't have to worry about the two different earbuds, the new ones have got the same sort of options. However, in comparison to the older model, the Technics AZ60s, you did not have the ability to read the level of your charging case. So it's great to see that the battery levels is actually reading right now. Now through it you have got a few different tabs, for example the noise cancellation function which you can enable and also toggle, and you've also got the ability to toggle ambient sound, which is something I actually forgot to touch upon. So here you've got the transparent and attention modes, which can be quite handy in certain environments. Now as for the custom tab, this is actually to do with the EQ. In this respect you can see the AZ80s have actually got quite substantial few notches on the 100Hz band, whereas on the 60s and the 60M2s I actually reduced this quite substantially. Of course it's all very subjective and you can go for one of the preset modes instead, such as for example the Super Bass Plus, which is a new one. Then you've also got the Find Headphones mode, which will emit a sound. Make sure they're not in your ears, but they can be quite handy if you've, for example, lost an earbud behind a sofa. And then you've also got the Just My Voice function, where you can toggle the setting and actually hear it for yourself, which can be very handy so you can understand how it's actually operating. Now through these tabs as well, these are just little shortcuts which are quite handy, and you've also got the settings cog. Now here you've got even more options. You've got the ability to change the language prompt. You can also change the volume of the language prompt. So that's actually quite rare, but it's great to see it's integrated and good to see that Technics have actually thought about it. You can change the headphone name, the body color on the app, and also add other earphones or of course headphones from Technics. Then you've also got the ability to adjust the auto power off or indeed fully disable it like I have. And then you've also got wear detection. Now this is something that I don't actually use, but if you were to use it, it's going to be present on the AZ80s and AZ60M2s only. In this respect, it will resume playback when the earbuds are back in your ears and pause it when they're out. Pretty self-explanatory. Then past that, you've also got the connection modes. Now here, this is very much something that I would definitely suggest you doing straight away, enabling the LDAC option and then going through your Bluetooth menu. As I did mention before, depending in terms of how your connectivity is, you might want to adjust that through your Bluetooth menu afterwards of enable LDAC. It even says it over here in red in terms of what is best for you. Just seem to set it as to what works in terms of your own scenarios. Now on that note as well, you've also got Bluetooth multipoint. In my case, I don't actually use it, but if I were going to use it, I'll be using two devices because I want to use the LDAC codec. Just bear in mind that if you were to do two devices, it is recommended to go for the best effort rather than the best audio quality when using LDAC. And of course, as I did mention before, and as I highlighted over here, 3 devices, LDAC cannot be used, therefore reverting to the AAC and SBC codecs. Now as for the suppression of sounds, I have no problems whatsoever, but automatic is the one that I use. Of course, you can go for the other modes if you have any sort of issues. Now in terms of the touch sensors, you can actually customize them, and I actually really love this. Here, first of all, you've got the ability to adjust between the left and right earbuds independently, which can't be said about some of its competitors, so it's fantastic to see. And then you've also got the telephone functions, which are a lot more limited, but nonetheless give you still the ability to adjust between the left and right earbuds. Now, in terms of actually operating the touch sensors, they're absolutely faultless. I've had no issues whatsoever for the past year with my Technics AZ60s, and indeed I can't see why it would be a problem with the similar AZ60M2s or AZ80s. Indeed, the touch sensors are very responsive and very good. The only complaint, of course, would be that if you are wearing gloves, then you might have preferred physical buttons like you'd find on some other rival manufacturers. Nonetheless, over here, I've got no complaints, and when it comes to overall usability, Technics should really be commended. Now, moving back to the app, you have got the ability to toggle through the different modes when you're adjusting the noise cancellation settings, and in my case, I've enabled all of them. You've got the different ambient modes, which we did touch upon before, and you've also got the ability to adjust the slider when it comes to the noise cancellation. That doesn't mean that the highest is the best, but rather in terms of what works for your scenario. In my case, I felt that the middle seemed to work the best and was the most comfortable in my case, and therefore was the mode that I selected. But feel free to play around with this depending on how you find the earbuds yourself in your given scenarios. Now then, you've also got the ability to adjust the background noise reduction, and this is for your callers. In my case, I've had no problems whatsoever using the normal mode, but of course, if you find that you're going to be in, let's say, more, noisy areas, or for example, there's a lot of wind or something like that, then you might want to enable the strong mode. Just bear in mind some of the negative effects of this, and feel free to just play around with it and do some tests as well. Finally, you have also got the ability to enable or disable the voice assistant. In my case, I've disabled it, but you have got Amazon Alexa built in, which can be quite handy in certain scenarios, but of course you will need the Amazon Alexa app to be also set up. Finally, you've got some user guides and also some ability to enable or disable the firmware update notification. So moving past the app, I would like to talk about the design of the earbuds. And here the AZ60s and the AZ60M2s and equally the AZ80s all do look the part. Indeed, they're available in a few different color finishes. Now past that, when it comes to the overall comfort, I had no issues whatsoever. The AZ80s and the AZ60M2s have got a weight of just 7 grams, at least per earbud, and therefore meant that they weren't heavy at all. However, it is worth considering that the different form factor and shape of the AZ80s meant that they didn't exactly fit as flushly, at least not in my opinion, in comparison to the AZ60s. Of course, this is going to be different in terms of your own ears and your ear canals, and even my left and right ears do actually differ very slightly. Now, what I'm trying to say over here is that the AZ80s and the AZ60M2s were comfortable to me, and in this respect, when I was commuting, walking, or even doing a light jog, I had no problems whatsoever. However, it is worth considering that if you have smaller ears or smaller ear canals, you might want to look at some of the alternatives that have a slightly smaller form factor. For example, the likes of One More, Jabra, or even Libratone. Now, it is also worth considering that if you're going to be doing a lot of strenuous exercises, for example, if you're going to be hitting the gym or going on some intense runs quite regularly, then you might want to look elsewhere altogether. And indeed, in this respect, I would suggest going for over-the-ear earbuds instead, because they will fit a lot more securely. Now, to conclude, I would like to talk about its battery life. And here, the earbuds have got a different rating depending on which sort of codec you're using. First off, if you're using the LDAC codec with active noise cancellation enabled, it sits at roughly 4.5 hours. This therefore moves up to 5 hours if you were to disable active noise cancellation, and therefore with the charging case, you'll get up to 16 hours and 17 hours respectively. Now, if you were to move off the LDAC codec and go for the AAC codec instead, you'll get better battery life, sitting at 7 hours and 7.5 hours respectively for the earbuds on a singular charge, and 24 and 25 hours with the charging case included. Speaking of which, over here, the charging case has also got a USB Type-C port and therefore also supports fast charging. Better still, the AZ80s and the AZ60M2s over the predecessor AZ60s also have a QI wireless charging, and therefore means that if you have got the ability of having a wireless charging pad, then you can also conveniently charge them without actually having to plug them in. So with all that in mind, it brings me on to my verdict, and quite frankly, I still absolutely love the Technics AZ60s, the original models, and given they come in at a discounted price, you should certainly go out and buy these. However, it's not to be discounted that the fact that the Technics AZ60M2s have got a bit of improvement. They've got the QI wireless charging, you have also got the wear detection, and also the likes of the improvements of the Just My Voice functionality, and finally, of course, you've got Bluetooth multipoint that goes up to 3 devices, up from 2. However, these features for me are not absolutely killer and a must buy, and therefore if you're going to be comparing this to the original model, I would say go get the original model because you can get it at a discounted price. Of course, when the original model is no longer available, then the Technics AZ60M2s would be my active recommendation, and as such they get my Best Buy awards. Now what about when it comes to the Technics AZ80s? Well, these earbuds are phenomenal. Yes, they come in at a more expensive price tag and they come in at a premium price tag in comparison to some of its competitors, but given the little improvements when it comes to the overall mid-range and soundstage, audiophiles will be left with a massive smile on their face. So therefore, if you want the best of the best, I would suggest getting the AZ80s over the AZ60s. Now, as such, they also get my Best Buy award. I know, all the awards are being flying around, but really, I do have to recommend these earbuds, because they're absolutely great, and I really love what Technics have done. Now, I'd be curious to know what you make of the earbuds down in the comment section below, and as to which earbuds you would pick. Now, if you've liked this independent detailed review and want to see more from myself and the channel, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing, and hitting that bell notification, all of which are greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.